All right, welcome to Module 7. We're moving right along here, really past the midway point of the course. And the topic for Module 7 is technology and the ethics of technology in sports. And this is, kind of a little bit of a different topic. I think some interesting aspects. There's not as much reading with this module, and I'm also going to keep the discussion pretty simple. So compared to a lot of the other modules, the workload will be a little bit lighter, but that should give you a good opportunity to get some work done on the review of literature, which is going to be due very soon. So hopefully you're staying on top of that. Just by way of introduction, I'm going to say a couple things about the two articles, just two readings this week, and they're not real long either, so that shouldn't take a lot of time. They're both by the same author, and there are some similarities between the two, but I think enough differences to make it worthwhile to read both articles. The first Lowland article from the textbook kind of focuses on really ethics as it relates to technology and sport, and the whole idea that we should have some type of ethic to guide how we use technology, because if we don't, it just kind of becomes a free-for-all, or we become focused on technological development for its own sake. You know, kind of the whole idea that we just always want to advance and never really look at how that impacts us as human beings and the moral and ethical issues that can arise from that. That's kind of the gist of that article. He kind of starts out by looking at some of the different aspects of technology, and he has four different areas: movement technique, which the example he gives is like tackling in football. So, you know, the idea that through technology, really that technology being like research, equipment, and just an understanding of the risks of head injuries, that we've developed better methods of tackling for safety purposes. The other area is sport equipment, and that one is the examples he gives there is like the swimsuits that were in the news a few years back for swimming competitions that were less resistant even than skin. So people who were wearing those suits were posting some of the fastest times ever. Aluminum bats would be a good example versus wooden bats, just technological advances in the equipment. Training technology, which would be any kind of technology that benefits training, weight equipment, other type of equipment that is involved with training, watches, GPS, apps. And he kind of focuses on the ethical issue there, being the whole idea that in many cases these training technologies are very expensive. So, what do we feel about the ethics of that being fair, like people with more money being able to benefit more? And then the last one, which is really the biggest one that he focuses on, is biomedical technology. And he kind of splits that up into weak and strong. Weak just being basically like supplements and that type of thing, and then strong being more like what we would consider performance enhancing drugs. And he kind of divides that up into three different areas. The three areas being the means or method for potential enhancement. These are criteria of biomedical technology, a potential health risk, and being against the spirit of the sport. And the one he kind of talks about the most is the potential health risk, because, obviously that would be an ethical issue. He kind of discusses the argument that any elite level of athletics involves some risk of injury, so there's probably a health risk no matter what. But he also talks about some of the other ethical issues that can arise from that, such as coercion, just really the whole idea that athletes might feel pressure to take performance enhancing drugs or things of that nature that they're not really comfortable with, and some of the ethics related to that. The second article by Lowland really kind of has the goal of establishing a reasonable way to determine the limits of technology and how that can guide us ethically. He gives a definition of technology, which is a human-made means to reach human interests and goals. And in sports, he kind of breaks that down into constitutive, which would be any type of technology that's necessary for the sport, such as in skiing. The skis are necessary. You can't ski without skis. The other area he talks about is preventing injury, so things like helmets. And then the last one, which is what he spends the most time on, is performance enhancing. And that has a number of categories, which are the same ones I talked about from the first article: movement, sport equipment, training technique, and biomedical. So yeah, he goes through all that, and then he talks about some theories to guide us from a moral aspect. And the first one he talks about is the relativist theory. And the relativist theory is basically kind of like the theory that oftentimes is used from an international level, which is kind of like we're going to do everything we can at all costs to beat other countries. So kind of like the whole Russian doping thing. Over the past 30, 40 years, there's been a number of instances where I would say this theory has definitely come to light as far as countries and their approach to usually like international type of competitions like the Olympics, which is basically as long as you don't get caught, anything goes to be the best that you can be. And so if that means using steroids or other performance enhancing drugs that are illegal, as long as you don't get caught, it's justifiable. And then there's the narrow view, which is really, I guess there's definitely proponents for it. You don't see it a lot out there right now, at least I don't. But that view is that really there's not any kind of ethical problem with any kind of technology. We should just use any and all of it to the full extent, and then it's fair for everybody because everybody has access to it. And the ultimate goal is the highest athletic performance, and we don't really consider anything else. And then the wide view is more of a view that I think is more mainstream in the majority of people hold, which he calls the wide view. And that in that view, there's definitely a moral aspect because he argues athletes are moral beings. We should have morals that guide us. And because of that, we should be critical of technology and how we use it in athletics. And we should look at how it impacts us as people and as humans. And what I'm really going to try to focus on in the discussion, at least the discussion question that I ask, is how do we apply a Christian perspective to this? Because I do think that this particular issue, we as Christians, we have a unique perspective because we view human beings as image bearers of God, and we view each human as having value because of that, and because of the biblical directives that we use in our lives. There are more important things than just winning competitions and being the best in the Olympics or any of that type of thing. There are moral and ethical standards that we use. And so, yeah, in the discussion question, I'm going to really ask you to try to communicate how that would play out for you when it comes to athletics. So looking forward to that. I'm going to really kind of keep this discussion this week pretty streamlined. And so really looking to focus on quality over quantity. Looking forward to the discussion.